If you're new to beekeeping, you probably have never heard of a quilt box in beekeeping. Putting a quilt box on your hive, does it really work? What does it even do? Who even came up with the idea? Why is there so much talk about a quilt box on a hive? Today we're going to take a look at a quilt box. I'm going to show you what it is. I'm going to show you why people use it. And then we're going to answer the question, is it worth it or worthless? And it all starts right now. Hey, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. I'm David Burns, EAS Certified Master Beekeeper. Good to be with you again to talk about a quilt box in beekeeping. Got a lot to go over today about the quilt box. And as we jump into the video, let me encourage you to please give me a thumbs up. Let me know you like this video. It goes a long way to help me out. And please subscribe. Now, I have a quilt box I want to show you, but I'm going to go the complicated way to show you the quilt box. Let me get started. Got some things to show you. All right, we're going to start here. Now, this is not a quilt box. What do you think this is? I'm going to have to show you this to show you the quilt box. This is a bottom board with one of these little slidey out things that go in and out. And if you may notice that this actually is a hive. It's not a miniature hive, it's not a toy hive. It is indeed smaller. It looks to me to be about 12 inches by 12 inches, kind of like a square. Now, if you've been in beekeeping for a while, immediately you probably think, oh, I know what this is. It's a Warre hive. W-A-R-R-E with a hyphen on the E, a Warre hive. Invented a man by the last name of Warre, I believe in the 50s, came up with the concept of a Warre hive. And it's a lot like a top bar hive in that it has, the frames are like a top bar frames, but it's kind of built in the same configuration as a Langstroth hive. But let me just kind of put this together and then I'll show you where the quilt box comes into play on this Warre hive. The next part of this hive, this is a very small hive, and then so the next part is a box, and it goes something like this, or it could go like this. I'm going to go with the window on the side. How about that? That probably makes a little more sense. This is an observation window here, and as you can tell, and it also comes with this little piece that fits into here that you can block it off. But if you want to look inside, you can take this little piece off. So this is the deep hive body. Now, when I said it was like a top bar hive, see, it has the top bars only. And it has a little triangle space here that the bees will add their comb to this little point on this frame, and no sidebars. So you have to really be skilled to handle a frame that doesn't have sidebars. Now, what is the next piece? It's a quilt box. All right, let me move this out of our way. All right, ready for the quilt box? Ta-da! Wow, look at that. This is a quilt box. All the talk about a quilt box, now you know what one is. Now, they're made differently. People have different designs and they have different agendas for using a quilt box. Most people use a quilt box for winter survival to help deplete the moisture out of the hive in the wintertime. Now, there's a lot of incorrect ways to think about a quilt box. How does it go in a hive? Does it go this way? Does it go this way? Do you put stuff in here or not? Well, let me show you. It fits on the hive just like this with the fabric at the bottom. So it goes like that, and then inside of here, this is where you add your choice of material that can help wick away moisture. So in this case, you may add, a lot of people use, I don't want to call it sawdust. Sawdust is much too condensed, it's too dense. It won't really work well. You can use shavings, wood shavings. Some people buy the wood shavings, but you may know somebody that has large chunks of wood, almost like mulch, but a little thinner than mulch. Some people use other fabric, like cloth fabric, and just put in here. But once you fill this up with wood shavings, then when you put it on the hive, what happens is, the concept is, and what I've heard people say, moisture goes through the initial canvas here. The moisture goes into your wood shavings here, and they say that, of course there's a top that goes on here, but they say that the moisture actually collects at the top of the wood shavings and it becomes very wet and sometimes even frozen. Now let me show you what it looks like if you put the top on it. Okay, I'm going to move the bottom board out just for demonstration. I'm getting a little too tall. Okay, so just going to set that. Let's pretend the bottom board's on there. Still get this in the picture. So again, we have the quilt box and it has the fabric or the cloth here, and then you put it on top of your deep frame like that, and you fill this with some sort of wood shavings. In a Worry hive, this is traditionally known as the way to do it, is that you have this top. It's a kind of a beautiful, gable type top, and it has this area here that's kind of gappy. So in this case, I did not make this. We bought this somewhere to sell it, and nobody was ever interested in buying this hive, believe it or not. So we're stuck with it. For example, if I take this off, most quilt boxes like this one here actually sit on top of the hive, and there's holes. There's maybe 1 or 2 holes on the sides, and they're covered with a vent or a screen so that air can passively kind of move through here and help ventilate the moisture out of the hive. In this case, there's no airflow. It may still work, I don't know, but I'm just telling you it's different than most of the quilt boxes that I've seen. Now, if you want to make your own quilt box, one of the ways you can do it on a traditional Langstroth hive is that you could pretend this might be the super or a deep, and you can actually take fiber and stretch it across the bottom of a deep box and then staple it onto the deep box, and then you can put it on like this. If you want to make those holes in there like a traditional quilt box has, you can drill them out with a hole drill, a hole saw or whatever, and you can make those holes in it and then put some bottom board screen over it to keep bugs out or mice out, and then you can put your top cover on there, and it would help wick away some of the moisture in the hive. A common fabric that people use here is burlap. I've seen a lot of burlap used in that way. Now, I'm going to have to tell you that when I was struggling with getting my bees through the winter, when I first started beekeeping, it was a tough thing to deal with for me because I had a lot of moisture in my hives. I would actually have frost that was developing on the bottom of my inner covers or my top covers, and then on a warmer day, that frost on the inside would actually drip down onto my bees, and when bees get wet and cold, it's really a bad combination. And so that's why I went to work on trying to figure out a way to get moisture out of my hive, and at that time I did experiment with quilt boxes, but I did not have any success personally trying to build a quilt box that would alleviate the moisture out of the hive that I wanted to get rid of. I still had moisture problems because, see, here in Illinois, what happens is in the winter time, we have very, very cold days in the winter. The bees in here are really warm. They are roughly 90 degrees plus Fahrenheit in the cluster in their deep box, and maybe the bottom deep or the top deep. They're making a lot of heat inside the hive. That heat from within the hive kind of rises up, and at the top of the hive you have the contrasting temperature of maybe 10 degrees outside Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Fahrenheit or less here in Illinois in the wintertime. The contrasting temperature of hot and cold causes condensation to develop on the warm side, the bottom of either the inner cover or the top piece in your hive. Well, since it's above the cluster and it's so cold, it actually can freeze, and then, or if it doesn't freeze, it collects and drips down on the bees. That was my problem. I had frames that were very wet. I had bees that were wet and dying. And so that's when I invented the Winter Be Kind board that has a candy mixture so that moisture is absorbed into the candy, making it more soft for the bees to consume. So the question now is a quilt box worth it or worthless? Well, in my opinion, if you're going to use a quilt box, it eliminates you being able to feed your bees with a common candy board, because the candy board is solid and it's supposed to go, you know, right here on these frames. So if you put it here on top of the candy board blocks or absorbs all the moisture. So for me, this becomes unnecessary. Now, if you're not feeding your bees candy and you have a moisture problem, if you're relying on your bees going through winter with just the honey on board and not putting a candy board on there to block the moisture that's rising, then by all means, a quilt box would be something that would benefit your bees, getting rid of some of that excess moisture that they're producing. You could get rid of that. Put your top cover on top of here, and again, I think you're going to have holes in here to help some air circulate and get rid of the moisture. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you've heard me talk about Reverend Langstroth, who invented the traditional Langstroth dimension hives. But he mentioned a lot in his book about getting rid of moisture in the wintertime out of the hive. He said it was vitally important to get rid of moisture. And there is a lot of moisture in the wintertime that either collects from the ambient moisture, humidity outside on a foggy day like today. It's 40 degrees and it was just raining a few minutes ago, and then it started sleeting. So the humidity outside is pretty high. So it's going to be high in the hive. It's just going to carry over. But even on cold days, when the humidity is really low, then we have a contrasting condensation buildup of contrasting temperature. So we do have moisture in the hive that we do need to get rid of. In my case, the Winter Be Kind was the perfect solution, because I still allow a hole in the front of the Winter Be Kind for the moisture to evaporate out of the hive, and also for the bees to take their cleansing flights through that opening as well. Now, beekeeping is a pretty tough thing to figure out in the wintertime. It's a challenge for all of us. But we keep trying to find out better ways and eliminate things that are taking our bees out in the wintertime. Now, let me say this. I thank you for following me this far in the video, because look, here's what's going to happen if you get excited about a quilt box. Quilt boxes cannot save a hive that has low populations or has a high viral load in the hive. What I mean by that is, if your hive does not have enough bees to stay warm, this will not help you. If your hive has a high mite count and those mites have spread a lot of viruses in your hive, this will not help save your bees. So a healthy colony, a very healthy, strong colony without mites or viruses taking them down, will survive without this, versus a colony that's low in population or has a lot of viruses as a result of the mites. Even with this on there, will still likely perish. This is not going to change the viral load or the low populations. So this is an added benefit to a healthy colony that's just going to help that colony get rid of moisture. Again, I really believe you need to have food on there in the wintertime. And I don't know of a better way to get rid of moisture in the hive than to put a candy board on it, so that candy is hard enough to absorb the moisture, dry enough I should say, to absorb that moisture and make that candy more liquidy for the bees to actually consume. Okay, so what's the verdict? Is the quilt board worthless or worth it? Well, it's worthless if you're using a candy board. It's worth it if you're trusting the bees have enough food in their frames and you don't have a candy board and you want to get rid of moisture. It's worth it. And again, you can make these easily out of some burlap stapled onto the bottom of maybe a super or even a deep box, and then fill that with some wood shavings, and then put some small circle holes, maybe a 1-inch diameter hole, 1 or 2 on each side to help wick away some of the moisture from that hive. Don't go crazy on a quilt box if you haven't gone crazy attacking mites, keeping your virus levels low. You're going to be wasting your time making a quilt box if you don't know your mite counts and if you don't know the populations of your bees in your hive last fall when we were trying to build up bees of winter physiology. So don't think this is the magic answer to getting your bees through the winter. The magic answer is hard work, keeping mite levels down and population of the colony very strong this time of the year as we head into winter. Again, winter is still over a month away and it's already cold outside. So we have a long way to go. You may not have noticed, but I produced a video on how to start beekeeping, and it's been on YouTube and it's been at the top of YouTube suggestions on how to start beekeeping. That video last week made it to 1 million views. I'm so thankful for all of you that enjoyed that video, how to start beekeeping. And if you haven't checked that beekeeping video out, take a look up here, how to start beekeeping. It's for those of you that are thinking about starting beekeeping in 2022. That is a very popular video. In just 2 years, it climbed to over 1 million views. I'm very humbled by that. Now, if you're just finding me on YouTube, I just made a great video about a week ago, and that video is about what to do with your bees in November, what things you should be thinking about and doing in that hive or to that hive in the month of November. And check that link out here. This video will take you through the steps you need to be taking in November to get your bees ready for winter. I hope you've received a lot of value from today's video. Maybe a lot of you, first time to hear about quilt boxes. I'm working for you. I work to help make videos so you can become a better beekeeper and gain more knowledge and understanding about things like quilt boxes. So I hope this video has added value in your beekeeping endeavor. And if it has, please do me a favor, would you? Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and click on the bell so you'll be notified each time I make a new video. That will mean so much to me. And before I go, I want to say if you are new to beekeeping, that's something you're thinking about doing in 2022, you need to check out this playlist right here. I've got a whole playlist, video after video, that I teach you more and more about becoming a beekeeper, your inspections, introduction to beekeeping and all. Check out this playlist right now, and I'll see you next time.